Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Ray, your host for Next Step Career Corner. And I am here today with my friend and colleague, Lili Foggle, who is the interview coach for Impressive Interviewing. Now, Lily is also a member of the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches, where we met. And I've taken plenty of trainings through that organization. But this last year, I got to study under Lily, and it was just amazing to learn all of the strategies and techniques to help clients and job seekers land the next job offer through their interviewing skills. So I'm very, very excited to have Lily here. Lily, hello.
Stephanie, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. So we are talking about confidence in interviewing. So I really want to know what does confidence look like in an interview?
Right. So, first of all, let's distinguish between like confidence and self esteem and confidence and other things. So, confidence is something that is built through success, right? People are confident when um, when they care about what they're trying to say that they can do. They believe that they can do it because they've had previous success, right? So confidence is built through success, whereas self esteem is just something kind of intrinsic. You kind of have it. You either believe in yourself or you kind of don't believe in yourself. You can build confidence just through having successes. So there's this idea. So I know a lot of your listeners are women leaders and aspiring women leaders. And one of the things that you see a lot of, if you look into some of the literature around confidence and interviewing, and specifically women, is that you see that women don't appear as confident in interviews as men. There's a lot of studies that say that in various different ways. So we know that confidence is super important. Like we know that in interviewing, confidence impacts both recruiters and hiring managers, whether they want to give a second interview, whether they think someone's suitable, whether they're likely to hire them. But exactly what does confidence look like? Like, how can a woman who wants to make sure that she's appearing confident in an interview, how can she do that? And I'm really excited to kind of dive into that and break that down. It's something that I've spent a lot of years looking into and teaching my clients how to show that confidence. And the other distinction I want to make is I think there's a distinction between feeling confident and having confidence and being perceived as having confidence, right? So, whether or not someone has confidence, again, is going to be based on their success. Have they done this before? Do they believe that they can be successful? But there are behaviors they can do, even if they maybe really don't have that confidence yet, so that they can be perceived of as having confidence.
Yes. And that perception is a huge part of it because I think a lot of my clients come into interview coaching, oh, how do I sit or my body language and what do I say? And there's a lot of tricks that we can teach our clients to help them with that. But I just want to make it clear it's okay to be nervous for an interview. It-
You
yeah,
should be nervous for an if you're not nervous for an interview, it kinda says that you don't care, right? People
exactly.
really care about something, but they're unsure that they're gonna be able to do what they need to do to be successful. So if you're not nervous, it either means that, you don't care or you're super confident.
Right. And so I don't want them to mistake the fact that, oh, I'm really nervous for this interview. That means I'm not confident in myself. That's not the case. That is not the case. Right. When I was interviewing and the start of my career, it was a huge part. Like I knew what I was doing. I was good. Like one of my skills was being tech savvy. Like I really knew software and computers. And so if you got me on that topic, forget the nerves. I just went off. But I was always initially really nervous for those interviews. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. So don't worry. Don't worry if you're nervous. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. Let's deep dive into what confidence can look like in an interview.
Sure. So there's actually been a lot of studies about the fact that there is definitely, without a doubt, there is a gender gap in perceived confidence in interviews. What's not so clear is whether or not there's an actual gender gap in actual confidence, right? Some of the older studies seem to indicate there was one, if you read about this, a lot of the articles and even in the book Lean In, they quote that, only 60% of women will apply, something like men will apply to a job if they have 60% of the prerequisites, but women will only apply if they have 100%. So this has kind of been debunked, right? And it was also shown as like, this is an example of that women aren't confident. And in the subsequent years, and it was based on some Hewlett Packard internal memo about why women were not applying for promotions, but men were, right? And then subsequently, come to find out in subsequent studies that actually it's not that women weren't confident that they didn't apply if they didn't have the prerequisites. They didn't want to waste their time, right? That
Ah,
women don't have a lot of time. And if they think they're not going to be successful, they don't want to spend the time to apply to that. So, whether or not there's an actual confidence gap, there are studies on both sides of this, right? But there's no question that when it comes to interviewing, women are perceived not to have as much confidence. And there are some very specific behaviors that they do that make them perceive that way. And one of the big ones is women are seem to be much less likely to take credit for their achievements, to be
yeah.
personal, to say I instead of we. They're much more likely to couch their successes and achievements in terms of teamwork, in terms of we. And listen, being able to acknowledge that you didn't do everything by yourself and that there was a whole team, that's an important quality, particularly for a leader. You want to be able to give credit where credit's due, but at the same time, if there's no I, if there's no, so there was a study that was done. This was like back in 2017. It was by Leadership IQ, and they analyzed like 20,000 interview answers, and a whole panel of recruiters and hiring managers rated those answers as low performing, high performing, or somewhere in the middle. It was about like a third was about low performing and a third was about high performing. And then they did an analysis on what was actually the difference linguistically between the high performing answers and the low performing answers. And the biggest difference they found was that the high performing answers in interviews use the word I more than the low performing answers. And the low performing answers were more likely to say we, you, them, things like that, and not to use the word I. So being able to say, you know, I have a proven ability to X, one of my strengths is X. Being able to talk about what it is you're good at is something that a lot of women, and frankly, in my experience as an interview coach, not just women, right? Uh,
Yes.
not just women, first gen professionals, new grads, anyone who considers themselves kind of either in a marginalized group or kind of not in the mainstream, might have a little imposter syndrome, struggles a little bit with being able to say, this is what I'm good at in a really clear, powerful, and authentic way. And there were other studies done about like, why don't women want to say that? Why are women couching everything in terms of we and teamwork? And part of it is number one, there's like these modesty norms, right? That we're kind of socialized into about how women are supposed to kind of show up and present in the world as humble and with humility and not braggy and not conceited and not cocky, right? So there's that. But there's also even a bigger factor than not wanting to be perceived that way is being afraid of the backlash, right? That if I come off as braggy, if I come off as, overconfident, that I, as a woman, because that's not consistent with the gender norms in my culture, I'm going to get dinged. I'm going to get penalized. They're not going to like me as a candidate. Right. So for a long time, I think studies and all the data showed that that was some of the reasons why women were less comfortable saying that. But the great news, like there's some really good news. Number one, you can learn these skills. So we can break down like exactly what those skills are.
Yeah.
Those things. But number two, new studies have shown that that backlash doesn't seem to be here anymore. There was a study done. Oh, let me see if I can find it real quick. There was a study done. Here it is. 2023. This was the study. And they showed that women and men who were equally confident, not only, and who showed up as confident, were perceived as confident in the interview. Not only was there no backlash against the women, they were more likely to be hired than the men who were confident. It was a bigger plus for a woman than it even was for a man to have that kind of ability to successfully self promote, right? To demonstrate confidence in an interview. So that's some good news, I think, for women who are aspiring to higher leadership positions, as they don't need to be as worried about that backlash now.
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially that recent study, 2023. That's super recent. Yeah.
I think there are three things that women can do, or anybody can do, to show more confidence. And again, I'm a little bit of a research nerd, so most of this is grounded in research. Number one is that using the word "I" and getting comfortable with taking personal credit for achievements and successes. Number two, and it's something you alluded to in the beginning of the conversation, is those nonverbal behaviors, right? And again, lots of data around some very specific behaviors. Eye contact. Amazing what the data shows in terms of people who make consistent eye contact during interviews versus those who don't. The difference in perceived confidence is huge, right? So eye contact, smiling, uh,
Hmm.
body language, crossing your arms is a no. having
Right.
your Having your hands visible is a yes. That shows confidence, being able to use your hands, whereas having your hands not visible seems to be interpreted as less confident, and not only less confident, less competent. Um,
Mm,
let's see. What they call like rapid movement, like instead of just being really, really still, kind of leaning forward or using your hands or getting animated a little bit, like animating your body, moving your body a little bit seems to show confidence. But the big ones are eye contact, smiling, leaning forward. Um, yeah, those are the big ones.
yeah.
And those practice, right? Those are things that you can practice. I do have some clients. Have you ever had a client that is really uncomfortable with eye contact?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it's fun because I remember specifically with that client, I'm like, if you're thinking about something, you can look away, right? It's okay where you get asked a question and you look away or you think over here, like that's fine. But when you answer, look at the person, right? And you don't have to bore straight into their eyes, but at least bounce back and forth. And it's easier in some ways with a panel because you can go from person to person, and it's you can okay a few minutes here, a few minutes here, a few minutes here. But when you're on a one-on-one, you do have to be centered. But it's okay to blink, right? Go look away, come back and talk. So I do remember that. And that seemed to help quite a bit because I think this person was thinking, the extremes, like no eye contact to let me just stare into your eyes. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. You can bounce back and forth a little bit.
And I've had a lot of clients that are uncomfortable with eye contact for some real reasons, right? Like I have neurodiverse clients, a lot of people on the autism spectrum are uncomfortable with eye contact. I've had clients from cultures where eye contact is considered rude. So
Mhm.
like they're literally conditioned not to make eye contact so as not to give offense. One of the little hacks that I sometimes do is I tell them if they're uncomfortable looking at someone's eyes, and this is a particularly useful hack for somebody on the autism spectrum, to look at like the center of their forehead instead, or like the bridge of their nose instead,
That's
'cause
great.
that's less uncomfortable, but to the other person, it looks like you're making eye contact, right? And just to do that, at least once during every answer, if you can't do it consistently. And, so many interviews now are over this, right? Over video. And we haven't even started talking about all the asynchronous interviews and the one-way interviews and AI interviews. We can
No,
get
we haven't.
because body language is hugely important for a lot of those. There's been studies that show that in asynchronous interviews, body language is even more important than in live interviews. But I often tell my clients to put a little sticky right next to the camera, a little something, just to remind them to look at the camera from time to time, like I am right now, whereas now I'm looking at you, at my reflection of you. But that putting a little sticky or something there can help them make eye contact when they're interviewing, as most of them are at this point online.
Online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes it makes a huge, huge difference to make eye contact. And like you said, showing your hands. I have some clients that worry too much about using their hands. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Like that is who you are. And it shows animation and it shows that you're engaged and you're a part of that conversation. So don't even worry about it. Um, the I statements, I have been there with you working on saying I, and it's a struggle. But it's super important and it provides clarity for yourself too. I remember working on the saying I and understanding, my strengths and saying it also made me realize, oh wow, that is one of my superpowers. Or oh yeah, I am really good at that. Why don't I say that? And I find that even in running my business, I'm finding that it boosts my confidence. Just having clarity on those I statements or those saying my strengths are, or really focusing on the I versus we, right?
Exactly. Specific so that it can really help you clarify for yourself what are the strengths that you bring to the role. So
Hmm.
I think it's really important, particularly for women who are going into leadership positions, is to distinguish between focusing on your management skills and focusing on your leadership ability, right? A lot of times the road to leadership comes through management. And we're so used to saying, okay, what have I managed? What have I executed? What have I planned? What have I organized? And to talk about those in an interview for a leadership position, but to understand that leadership abilities are a little bit different, right? You want to really show that you have these kind of elevated things like the ability to inspire people, the ability to drive change, and when you're creating your success stories, to make sure that you're focusing on what are your I statements, right? What do you bring? What abilities do you have that are really leadership abilities as opposed to management skills, right? Management abilities and really
Yes, because leadership, it's management is about tasks and activities, right? It's very much did this get done? Did that get done? Did the scores come out? Did you reach your quota? Right? There's a lot of activities that managers have to worry about. Leadership, it's about your philosophy and your vision and how this all comes together. And I find personally, if you are invested in your team, right? Professional development or mentorship, or I know giving credit is a part of that, but giving them the opportunity to like a skip level presentation, right? Well, I'm not going to give this presentation, and I'm going to have my manager give this presentation so they can have face to face time. They can have the experience in presenting and then giving feedback based on that presentation. When I work with my leaders, both men and women who care about their teams, the natural leadership abilities are there. So, how do we talk about those in an interview?
well. So there's this guy there's a framework. A guy named John Cotter came up with this framework of like what are leadership abilities versus management skills, and he says that there's four leader like really kind of categories of leadership ability. Like you said, setting the direction, setting the vision, inspiring people, driving change, but also aligning people. So if I were, when I'm coaching someone for a leadership role, I want them to have success stories in each of those categories, right? When's the time that you had to get people aligned? When's the time that you drove change? When's the time that you had to come up with a direction and kind of get other people to buy into your vision? So we want our candidates to have and our clients to have really concrete examples of their abilities to do those things. Right.
Hmm. What was the name of that author?
John Cotter. I don't know that he's an author. It's kind of like one of those frameworks that they teach you in
Oh, I see.
school, right? It's Kotter. It's kind
Right.
of one more widely known. Um, I mean, there's the Goldman. I mean, there's so many different kind of, here's the dimensions of leadership. But this is just the one that I think is because it's not seven, it's not eight, it's just like four things, but it
Yeah.
really creates leadership from management. Really kind of
Well,
helps.
I will find a link and put it in the chat somewhere. We will get that information. Perfect. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about perceived confidence. What does that look like?
So, so I think that if you're focusing on those three areas, right? You're focusing on saying I, and taking credit and using I language and not we language. If you're focusing on those nonverbal behaviors, eye contact, smiling, leaning forward, showing animation, and avoiding the kind of nonverbal behaviors that can get you that can hurt your candidacy, like, playing with your hair or fidgeting around in your chair or leaning back. I mean, there are things that you can do non-verbally that hurt your candidacy. But if you're working on the things that can project confidence, and you've prepared those success stories about your leadership abilities, and you're focusing very intentionally focusing on those abilities, I think that's where, whether or not you have confidence, whether or not, I mean, hopefully you do. But again, you can show up as having confidence. You can appear as having confidence if you can effectively self promote in that way and use those behaviors that land like confidence. And I think
No, that's great.
for women especially, there is some evidence that when it comes to male dominated kind of roles that are typically given to men, it's still a tough sell to get a woman into those roles, right? And so there's a lot that as women we have to kind of overcome to get into those roles. But I think that focusing on those three things, right? Taking credits for personal achievements, mastering that nonverbal behavior, and really focusing on the successes you've had with leadership abilities can go a long way. And then when you're talking about like these one-way interviews, Stephanie, are you getting a lot of clients that are telling you that they've got asynchronous interviews or AI interviews or interviews with an AI avatar? Because are you seeing that?
Yes, yes. I just had a leader. We just worked on all of her documents and she immediately got an interview and we're super excited about it. And we're talking, president level, executive director level of an organization. And they wanted to use Spark Hire as the first step to interviewing. And I was shocked because at that level, I'm not expecting AI to be a part of it. I'm expecting very much a human touch because leadership is so important to an organization. And so we had a full conversation, and I sent some articles about what to expect from Spark Hire and common questions to be asked. But even the common questions were, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or what's a common mistake you've made? And I'm like, this is a president. It's like, why? It made no sense why that was a part of the interview process. But I'm still waiting on feedback to see how it went because it's happening this week. But yeah,
I'm actually a little floored. Like my jaw's kind of dropping that with what you just said, particularly with one of the questions being, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That's such a generic question to ask at that level. So yeah, I'm seeing a total increase and it's going to get more so. And as interview coaches, I think we have to shift how we prepare clients into this new world that they're going into. And the evidence is that, well, first of all, it depends on how they're using AI. Like sometimes it's just an asynchronous interview, meaning you're not talking to anybody. You see a question there and you're
yes,
told you have 30 seconds or 1 minute or however long that company has said you have to prepare your answer. And then your answer has to be, this length of time. By the way, you want to talk about anxiety for interviews where we started like it's okay to be nervous. This is a whole new bag of worms of things to be anxious about, right? Am I going to be able to say it in the right time frame? Do I understand this algorithm? Is the algorithm going to ding me for something that I'm not even aware of because I didn't use enough keywords or my micro expressions were, I mean, oh my goodness. Or the background, like, are they going to make some judgment about me, about my environment or the background, or is my tech going to glitch? So many different things to have anxiety over with the kind of new form of interviews that are so technological. I think that where we're headed is a lot more just like with resumes, how making it easy to apply has caused so many companies to use this applicant tracking software so that they can process 3,000 resumes in 24 hours. I think we're going to start to see AI being used to assess and process these asynchronous interviews so that it's a lot of work for the candidate and less work for the hiring manager and the recruiter. Um, you're shaking your head no.
Oh no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm not happy about these trends. I'm just shaking my head because I was just thinking about a client a couple of months ago, sometime this last year. The recruiter had talked to my client, and so we had nothing to do with AI. We had nothing to do with videos, but it made me think of him because the recruiter made some notes. The notes were sent to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager's initial reaction was, I'm not going to talk to this guy because of the notes. So all I was thinking was, wow, if we get AI going on with the micro expressions and the backgrounds and the keywords, you're going to have these hiring managers that are going to miss out on an opportunity because this hiring manager ended up going back and interviewing my client and ended up hiring him, but his initial reaction was like, "Oh, well, this doesn't align with what we're looking for," before he even had a conversation. So I'm shaking my head thinking, wow, all of that missed talent is going to just fall through the cracks because they're relying on a computer or software to tell them things about a person that they should be meet. I mean, a 15-minute phone call or a 15-minute Zoom is going to tell you way more information about this candidate than AI ever will. So I'm just shaking my head going, oh, I'm so not happy about this. We're losing the human element. We're using, and then confidence, like, oh, let's put up all these barriers. Let's get a camera involved. Let's get software involved. Let's get AI involved. And it's hard enough just to meet with a stranger and use eye language and use body cues. And I mean, I
Yeah.
could go on and on about this, but yeah, it's not a good trend.
Unfortunately, I think it's unavoidable. I think it's where we're headed.
Hmm.
I always try to look for silver linings when I think something bad is unavoidably going to happen. Like, well, okay, we're finding a little good news. And there is some evidence that using AI in hiring does a pretty good job of eliminating bias, right? Um,
Oh, okay. So there's some good news. All
there
right.
is
So let's talk about that. Tell us more.
So I have seen some things just very recently, and I think a lot of people believe that AI, but then again, that's only if the AI doesn't have bias kind of built into it, right? We have to, and there's so much evidence that AI already is kind of absorbing the bias that exists in whatever data it's being trained on. But if you could come up with an AI interviewing process that was devoid of the bias in the data it's trained on, I can imagine that it would do a better job than humans because there's so many different kinds of bias, right? I'm not just talking
Hmm.
the kind we think of when we think of discrimination, which is of course illegal in hiring, bias against gender, bias against ethnicity, bias against religion. I'm not even talking about that. But there's so many kinds of bias in interviewing, like, bias towards someone because they're kind of like you in some way, right? That's very common. That's how you end up with, teams where everybody kind of looks alike or kind of the same or from the same kind of background, as opposed to bringing in kind of some value add, bringing in people who bring a different perspective. Or there's even a bias, it's called first impression bias, that whatever your first impression is, there's nothing that can be done that will shake you from it. If you decide in those first 5 seconds you don't like somebody, there's nothing that somebody can say that's going to make you like them, and vice versa. If in the first 5 seconds you're like, oh, I like this person, even if they end up telling you something that should be a red flag, if it's first impression bias, it's like, no, my first impression, or what about I have a gut feeling? There's like that gut bias, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, something. Well, my gut feeling is she's not for us, right? Or so many different kinds of bias, appearance bias. Anyway, so I think AI, when you take that human factor into consideration, hiring, which has been problematic, right, for a lot of companies, it could be a good thing if the push for AI in assessing hiring helps us bring down the different kinds of biases that impact hiring decisions. But I couldn't agree with you more about not just losing the human touch, but people are going to have to start learning how to game that system. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but just like with a resume, people have to learn how to game the ATS system. People have to learn how to, how do you
Mhm.
get a resume to float to the top when they're parsing 3,000 resumes? When an AI is parsing 3,000 resumes or software is parsing 3,000 resumes in 24 hours. And if everybody, if they start letting everybody do video interviews, yeah, we'll get these 200 candidates to do an asynchronous interview. We'll get AI to distill that down to data and rank just like they do with an ATS system, rank who are seem to be the best fit. We're going to have to start teaching our clients how to game that system as well.
Yeah. And it just leads to unethical practices, right? I mean, there are so many ploys for resume writing that people use to get around it, which aren't ethical. And now we're talking about doing that to interviews as well. Oh, it's a can of worms. It's a can of worms, but we're going to help our clients.
You've piqued my interest, Stephanie. What are you talking about? These
So,
unethical.
oh, okay. Okay. One little thing. I'm not recommending this. Okay. Do not do this with your resumes. But there was a while there where people would copy and paste the job description into their resume in white text.
What?
So they would match at 100%. That was the idea. Well, recruiters got smart and they figured it out. And now if you do white text, you get kicked out automatically because you're cheating. But it's I could just see practices like that becoming more and more prevalent because they're making it so hard to land a job, right?
Yeah.
It's in
Sorry, I've seen similar things with interviewing. I've seen, and again, don't do this, right? This is but the interview coach saying, do not do this. This is unethical. And if you're caught, like, forget it. Your candidacy is dead. And just don't do this. Because if you're not caught during the interview, you'll get caught when you show up and you're clearly not qualified for the role. But I have seen videos of people who have AI, now AI can hear, AI can, respond open on a different device while they're in the interview, particularly with some of these tech interviews where you have to solve problems. And I saw one video where the interviewer, I guess the candidate had begun to answer a tech problem so perfectly. The interviewer went like this: "Share your screen with me. Share your screen with me right now. Right now, share your screen with me." Because wanted to see if they were doing that on the screen, but they had it on a separate device. They didn't get caught and they continued to use it. It's not effective. Don't do it. But
mm-mm.
yeah. Oh, I mean, like you say, we're going to start to see more unethical kind of hacks of that system.
Yeah, yeah. So I worry about that. I worry about that because my clients are genuine people that just want to do good work. They want to work for a good company. They want to match the values. They want to complete the mission of the company. I mean, they care. They truly care. And all of these barriers that I'm seeing with the resume and now interviewing, it's just tough. So, if anything, hire a professional, right? You can find many certified coaches out there, interview coaches, resume writers, career coaches, job search coaches. Verify that they're certified, make sure that, they know what they're doing and make sure they fit, right? You want to work with someone that you gel with, and just do the best that you can because 2025, I mean, it's going to be an interesting year. I think I'm optimistic about the job market and what's coming. But we'll see. We'll see. So, Lily, where can our listeners find you and connect with you?
Oh, I hope you'll connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Lili Foggle, Lilifogg. Also, you can find me at my website, impressiveinterviewing.com. I have a lot of free tips on my website about interview strategies and interview tips. And of course, if anyone needs one on one coaching for that big interview, I am available.
Thank you so much for your time, Lily. It was so great to chat with you today. We had such a fun conversation. Everybody enjoy. Good luck in 2025, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.